3 times AWS certified. You mentioned that you became a top achiever at grade 11 or 10. What changed then? What were you reading that you were not reading in the previous grades?
Learned how to study. Learning how to learn, it's a different curve. I had to apply certain strategies. One of them were be where you are, water where you are, look for problems of where you are, start businesses from problems of where you are.
2 use cases that stood out for me was question paper creation and definitely marking. And please just explain to a person that doesn't know what Educase is in the most simplest way.
So how it started is that my co-founder, Nosipho Ndlovu, her mom is a teacher. So she came to me and was like, Zanele, my mom just spent the entire night creating a question paper. Understanding your history and not a perspective of history is very important.
Great. What's happening, everybody? Here's another episode with your favorite Mr. Cater. In today's chat, we're going to be chatting with, I'm not sure if she wants to be called Zanele or Zanele. I mean, there's a pronunciation probably preference there. But I'll just ask her to introduce herself and then maybe where she grew up from and what's so most interesting about her. Zanele, please.
Hi. I actually have 3 names. I have Zanele Sihle Perseverance. Whichever way you want to pronounce it, I'm good with it as long as you know that I've got 3 names. But my name is Zanele Sihle Perseverance Sibanyoni and I'm a web developer. I am from the East Rand, from Echaleksdal. I went to Brekman High School and then I went to study at WITS, computer science, and then I went to work at Standard Bank, went to work at Amazon, and currently I am running my own company. And yeah, that's just me as a software developer.
You specifically told me that you want to be called a web developer, but I'll skip that for now and then go straight to your high school life, and then we come pretty well to the current career you're doing right now. For those that don't know what Educase is or the business that she's talking about, it's an AI pretty cool tool in the education system that is helping teachers with preparing questions, with as quick as possible. I mean, she will take us through the whole thing pretty well. But for now, let's look at your high school. I think you mentioned a very difficult name for me to say. How was it in general for you? And I think you also mentioned something about you doing CAT as part of your optionals, just for the love of it.
I've always been in love with computers, and I remember the first time my mother got me a laptop and I was like, oh my goodness, I can type here, I can watch videos. And then I chose to do CAT. CAT is called Computational Applied Technology in high schools. And that's the subject that I chose, even though I remember being told that you're not gonna have any varsity points for CAT, but I just went on for CAT because I've always been interested in technology. I've always been interested in how technology is integrated into our lives. Rapid High School was a notorious high school where a lot of kids, it was known for a lot of bad behaviors. But then I would say that I had amazing teachers that I could allowed me to express myself as an academic, even at that young age. And I remember when I chose CAT and people were telling me, no, you're not supposed to choose CAT. But I remember my CAT teacher saying, hey, this is interesting. This is the future. I remember there was a time where DJ Spoo came to our high school and he was like to us, hey, I know you guys are notorious, but I know that if I speak to you guys, you're going to listen to what I'm saying. I was one of those kids that was just like always interested in being in the top 10. I remember crying every day because I was never in the top 10 until I was in like grade 11 and 12. And I remember crying, and nobody understood why I was crying about being in the top 10. But I was able to be obsessed about academics, even though I came from a school where most kids would rather go to a house party than to go to school.
You just mentioned, I think, about 3 topics here that I'm super interested in talking to you about. You mentioned that DJs came and say, you will listen to me. And I mean, did you feel like it had an impact, or do you feel like maybe there is a better way somebody can talk to Notorious High School and maybe try to come to their level before trying to impose their way of thinking about things.
Did. 'Cause when he came to our school, of course he did mention, like, he was like, hey, I know a lot of people tell me not to come to Brakpan High School, but for me, I felt like as an older person, I understand where you guys were coming from. And what I liked about an example that he made is that he spoke to us, he spoke to entrepreneurs, because what he was saying is that if you are selling sweets at school, know that you can go far with that. And I remember him specifically saying that, hey, you can go so much far as long as you build your life and as long as you're intentional. I don't know if it made a difference with other students and
People.
learners, but for me it did, because I was so ready to hear somebody that didn't give up on our school. Like, our school was notorious. There was a time where they would go to a house party and a whole police van would get everybody and they would take them to the police station and they would call their parents, and everybody in the school were like, they were like, they felt so much pride in that. But when teachers who came to our school and said those words, it didn't alienate some of the learners that were already trying something out and selling. I know it's illegal to sell
Yeah.
sweets at school, but then he wasn't coming from, hey, you guys are supposed to do this and do that. But he was mainly saying, you think you're that bad? No, I can still get to you and I can still speak certain words to you that you can understand. So I'll forever
Yeah.
remember that day. Honestly, I'll forever
Wonderful.
remember that day, because I felt like a DJ Spoo is coming to my school and he's not judging us. Instead, he's telling us that actually we're
It's
not that
fine.
bad.
Yep. No, I get what you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
you need somebody to be on your side before they come and just, judge or impose their way of thinking on you. And is selling sweets at
Yes.
school
Yes.
illegal? I mean, is it illegal? I've never read or ever signed a form in high school that says don't sell
Illegal,
sweets
but it
at
will
school.
get you into trouble. You will get into some
Yeah, I
trouble.
think that's a very good question to
Maybe not
ask too.
illegal, but like some trouble.
Yeah, yeah, I think we might have to just ask people out there to say, is selling sweets or selling Zimbas or snacks, anything in high school illegal? Because there are some other people who get their connections, confidence, and a little money as well, by the way, in high school by doing that. So if we just tag it as illegal and not try to fact check that, the message could come up a bit more intimidating. You said teachers showed interest in you and that really ignited something, right? Let's talk about that. Does that mean that the other students that never got an attention from the teachers got demotivated from that point?
For me, I would tell you that because I've always been interested, like, I remember with my English teacher, we were reading Maru. Maru, I've always loved that book. Loved it. I still love it to today. And I would stay, I would even break time, I would go to my teachers and be like, can you please explain further? What is this? Even with my maths, I would go to my teachers during the lunchtime, even with physics and any subject that I would have. I would go to my teachers and ask them to explain further, and I would just have a conversation with them. And of course, during class, I would get, I wouldn't be failing, and yet I wouldn't be in the top 10, but yet again, you could see that I was trying. And I would say that, does it mean that other learners didn't get attention? No, I wouldn't say that they wouldn't get attention, because I would also go with my friends. I would like literally go with my friends. I'm like, let's go to Mr. This, Mrs. This, and then they would explain to us. But I would say that the initiative for me to go during lunchtime, to go during after school, did ignite more attention, and teachers did want to, at least they understood how they could help me. Let me say that, at least they understood how they could help me, because when I go to them, I would share what I'm struggling with, where I could go, I mean, what I got wrong, and my aspirations in life. And Yes, I would say that I would get a bit more attention because of how my enthusiasm when it comes to education.
You mentioned that you became a top achiever at grade 11 or 10. What changed then? What method? What were you reading that you were not reading in the previous grades?
Learned how to study.
Okay,
I learned how to
interesting.
study. It's it's one thing, like learning how to learn, it's a different curve. Even now in my life as a software engineer, learning how to learn is lots. Like, and not giving up on yourself when you're not learning. I had to apply certain strategies. One of them were I had to literally rewrite the test book, write it down, like write everything down rather than just reading. Because I wouldn't say I'm diagnosed with ADHD, but then my concentration is not okay. So when I then write it down rather than just reading, I was able to retain it. But I only learned this when I was in grade 11, when I remember in chemistry, we had chemical reactions, and I literally had to write everything down. Yes, it did
Mm-hmm.
take much time than read. Of course, some people can read and understand, but I'm not one
Yeah.
of those people. I've always done my homework. I've always pushed myself. But then I didn't know how to make my mind understand what I was learning, internalize it, and remember it. For some students, it comes easy. To a point where there was one top 10 learner. When I started being in the top 10, you know what they say to me? They were like to me,
I know those topics. I know
Zanele,
those topics. Yeah, go for it.
like to me, Zanele, when you're a nerd. And I was like, why? Why are you saying that? I don't know. Okay, fine. Their definition of nerd maybe was different, but then this is what they said. They were like, you need to study to get where you are. And I looked at her. At first, I thought it was an insult, like, hey, you're not naturally smart. Because we live in a world where it's being naturally smart is praised. At that point, I looked at her and I was like, yeah, but we're in the same top 10 now. I was in grade 12 by then. I was like, and she told me, she was like, you're a nerd. You need to go and study a lot in order for you to get these answers. Instead, I needed to put in more hours, and not being naturally gifted with a mind that can retain did not cancel me at the end of the day. It
I
didn't
see.
mean that I'm not going to get to where I am today. It just meant that I do not retain things as easily, and I
It's somebody
don't,
else.
and it's okay.
I see that. I mean, at first you'd think such people, I'm putting quotes around it, such people are there to compliment you, but you go home and then you try to decode that statement. It's an insult somewhere somehow, which is crazy. And I think I really
But
like the way, yeah, I really like the way you received it. For you, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, it's not like you're telling me something new. I do know that I need to read a bit more than anybody else to get where I am, and I have accepted the challenge, which is something pretty good. You also mentioned that you got to tell yourself to have confidence, then you learn. For me, I always find it from a point of the more you learn, the more you get confidence. Yes, you do need that small confidence jab at first to just kick off. You've been
yeah,
talking about you had to read a lot. How did that change over time in your life? More especially when you come to university where you have so much content and you can't be reading the whole book. How did you change your mind to now start reading small but get more when you go to university?
say that leveraging relationships helped me when you go to varsity. I mean, yet again, I wouldn't say I'm a cum laude student, but I did complete in record time. And I would say what helped me in varsity was that I was not afraid to be stupid. We would have WhatsApp groups where we'd get information, because studying by yourself, especially in varsity, is not a smart move. You do need other students who are going to help you with maths. I did computer science, so we had an amazing community. Like, shout out to Prim. Prim is like an amazing. Even now, she's still amazing. She could understand things a bit better when it came to lecturers. She had a better relationship with lecturers. Yet again, because of my confidence. Confidence is, for me, confidence is such it's my Achilles heel. Like, it is, and it's something that I have to fight each and every day. But there are ways around it. If you can't fight it immediately, it doesn't mean that you can't move. Because often people will be like, just be confident. Those are people that are already confident. For us, people that are not born with that confidence, you can't tell a person just to be confident. Unfortunately, you can't. But there are other ways around it. And I'm not saying other ways around it to say, hey, you should never work towards it. But I'm saying, even if you're not there, it doesn't mean it should stop you. That's what I'm saying. And things such as your peers, it's easier for you to get on with your peers, maybe other than your lecturers, because sometimes your lecturers are so foreign to you. Even with race, they're different race sometimes, or they're just different from you. And
Age
like,
group
they
and all
say
that.
all these
Yes.
terms, sometimes when they, yeah. And if you haven't worked out your confidence yet, it doesn't mean, I'm not saying don't work on it, but I'm also saying let it not stop you. I think that's the decision that I took with myself. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm not a confident person. And people say, just be confident, just be confident. I wish I could press that button. I wish. I
Yeah.
wish.
Yeah.
But it doesn't define me. The fact that I'm not confident does not define me. There will be places where I'm not confident, but there will be places where I can fight it. And where I can fight it, I make sure I win. Where I can't fight it, it's fine. I'll move on. But yeah, I think your peers, having a relationship with your peers matters a lot if you are not a confident person and you can go to your lecturer to go ask for questions.
So basically, they could be your spokesperson. I mean, although over time it's not really for me. I wouldn't advise everybody or somebody to always be trying to be behind somebody else in life forever. But then it's a good point to start at to say before you actually get your own confidence or your own feel of approaching somebody, try get somebody else who can socialize and then work with them. You are the smart kid on the side, and then they are the person that does the talking, and then you make sure that you exchange your information to them, and they make sure that they exchange their talking to you somewhere somehow. What did you study at WITS? Just your undergrads? And tell me life at WITS. I mean, I studied at UJ, and we have been competitors for a very long time now, and I think it's still the very same thing. It's like we have this internal fight, which is good academically, you know. So can you just tell me life at WITS, what you have studied, just down the degree you did, and then kind of explain it in the most simplest term, please.
To correct, you guys have a competition with us. We have a competition with UCT. It's different.
Okay. Okay.
But hey,
About the jab. Cool.
This was its own challenge. I remember the first day in my computer science class, my lecturer was like, you don't have to take this semester if you can build an application for me, a gaming application. And then there was this guy, this dude up was like, okay, I'm going to build it. And they built it and they didn't do the semester at all. You may not start out as smart. And I think you'll hear my tone about this, not starting out
Yes.
smart in this interview. But then you able to build yourself up. We had like a computer lab where everyone would gather before their test and we would learn everything and would just share notes, and kids that got it, they would like explain to the kids that don't get it. And there was no discrimination. I remember coding my first calculator, and a friend of ours came to us and was like, you busy fascinating about coding a calculator where else people are coding FIFA. And like I I got to understand the principles of computer science. I got to understand the OS system, Linux. I remember coding the red black tree where you need to transverse. It was different with how you're supposed to think, but I got to understand that when you are a computer scientist, you need to think like a mathematician. You need to be sequential in your thinking, and you need to be able to trace things back. So the courses that I did at WITS taught me how to code, but not only that, how to learn how to code. We were given a couple of projects where you need to build applications, where you need to code your UI, you needed to code your back end, you needed to understand Linux, and all that has been helpful in my career.
When you actually identified your course, you said it's a BSc in mathematics and computer science.
I did applied maths. Applied maths. Let me be specific.
I mean, just for the people who are viewing, computer science, it's a strand of maths, and it is where you do create things like apps. I think for everyday things we see, it's like you can create WhatsApp, you can create Take-A-Lot or Amazon apps, and other nice stuff that we use, or YouTube app, by the way. There's a lot of thinking, design thinking, logical thinking, and all those kind of things that goes in. So for you, Zanele, would you say you are more of a creative or you're more of an algorithmic person in computer science?
I am more of a creative. I'm more of a creative person. I'm very abstract in how I think. I can only connect with information when I can see its value in the real world. I was actually one of the people that integrated proof of payment in the Standard Bank app. I was in the integration, more of like a proxy layer where we would get like requests from the front end, and then we would just like send them to all the legacy systems or new systems.
You did your honors degree in computer science in big data, I think, / big data analytics at the University of WITS. How does it differ from just normal computer science, and how does it make it computer science on steroids?
So big data analytics is about analyzing huge data sets, making sense of them so that you can train machine learning models on top of the data. So what I then did in that course was, of course, most of it was machine learning, where you would train a model based on your big data and forecast. That's the best word, actually. Focus on the trends of your data so that you better can understand what can happen in the future. What we did were courses around cleaning your data. We also did some image processing and natural language processing data. And as is, like, just summing it out, is understanding your data first and then building machine learning based models based on data that you first have cleaned. As data can be raw, but you can't just plug in any type of data for your machine learning to understand. You first need to make sense of the data as a human being, then train your own models. That means if there's some data that you need to cut out, you will then know during the process of data wrangling to then cut out certain parts of your data, such as maybe you might want to cut out some outliers. If you have got outliers, maybe there's just one person that makes the data skewed. Then you want to cut off that person. Let's say maybe there's just one learner that got 100% and other learners, or maybe there's just a few learners that got 100%, but most of the learners got maybe 60% in their marks. And then you want to remove maybe the 90% so that whenever you're training your data, depending on what you're training your model to do, you can then just focus on data that matters, because not all data matters. And you need to then discern that, hey, what data is going to give me a forecast depending on my use case? What data is going to give me a forecast that will enable me to forecast according to my use case? So that's what we learned in big data analytics. First, preparing the data and then building models on top of it.
Okay. So, I mean, it's giving me a vibe of data engineering as a stream. I think it has been popular recently when you do the cleaning of data before it gets to, they call it REST, I think.
We used to use PyTorch, Python to then clean up the data and also to build our models. It was mostly, not even mostly, it was just Python that we were using.
I'm not a data scientist person. I think I just found a video of this other product owner in the US side, right? She was telling us about how PyTorch became the center of AI, mostly on, like, this Tesla self-driving cars. Most of
Yes,
these AI
Tesla uses
models,
PyTorch.
they literally depend on PyTorch, which is insane. So I don't know. We can just put some links here, and if anyone is interested on how they use that, then they could just go do some reading. Right now, let's jump into your interesting career. Let's start with your 3 times AWS certified. You made it known on your profile, so that we need to talk about. Can you take us through your first certificate? Explain what it entails. Second certificate, explain, and then so on.
Okay, cool. So I was working at Standard Bank, and there was an initiative at Standard Bank to move to the cloud. This was before they moved to the cloud. And I was working as a graduate at Standard Bank. Then I joined a team. It was a mobile team where we were a proxy layer in the back end for the mobile banking at Standard Bank. So there was a big initiative at Standard Bank to move into AWS because AWS does offer a lot of tools for developers and to maintain and be up for like 99.9999999% of the time. I was new in the team and I wasn't given that much work, to be honest, and they were like, "Oh, you're new. What are we gonna do to you?" But I then saw an opportunity because already the senior devs they swamped with work, right? But then it was an initiative at Standard Bank to move to cloud, but there wasn't that much capacity from the senior developers. So I was like, let me take this chance. Let me take it. And then I did my certificate and I also did the solutions architect and the developer certificate because I just wanted to stand out in the team since the senior developers didn't have time. And I was tasked with tasks, but then that much, I thought, hey, this is an opening. Nobody is doing this. Let me then be the driver for migrating to AWS. So that's the reason I did the certificates. They were difficult to study for, but they reinforced so much of the learnings that I did in varsity, and I was able to impress my manager. I remember after writing the certificates, I was able to migrate an existing application, the cloud, and they were so excited. AWS certificates are very difficult, especially
Yeah.
when you don't have hands-on experience. So I wrote those certificates without having that much hands-on experience. But for me, it was for me to go back to my boss and be like, hello, somebody is here to do the work that nobody is willing to do, and I'm willing.
Let's roll back to the certificates you did, right? So, did you do the cloud practitioner certificate? At a high level, what does that certificate or the knowledge you get there give you?
The knowledge you get from the cloud practitioner is you get entry level knowledge of each service in AWS. So it is about definitions of what the service does. So you need to have an understanding of the entire service product at AWS.
Yes.
In order for you to understand, in order for you to pass the certificate. It's not that in depth. So you find that with other certificates where they put you mostly in a scenario to be like, hey, if I'm a software developer, I'm about to migrate, which is the best service for you to migrate with. With a practitioner, you need to understand your limits, maybe your service level agreement limits, to understand that things like Lambda, they give you a million requests for free a month, and after that you need to pay. Or like S3, you've got like different tiers of storages with S3, and then you then need to mostly understand what that service is, what that service is doing, and you need to understand the service SLA, service
Yes.
level agreement for that.
Myself, I only did the AWS Technical Essentials Certificate. It's a very small one, and AWS Business Essentials Certificate, which I think it's quite good for maybe businesses who are
Okay.
trying to migrate to the cloud. Just have an understanding at an overall to say how good or how bad could this fit in my business use
Yes.
case and all those kind of things before you get into the depth of it, or before you try to migrate and then you just find out, well, my business doesn't require me to migrate to the cloud.
They're more scenario based. The questions are mostly based on, hey, I have a company that wants to migrate to the cloud. What services should I use? What should I consider when I'm migrating to the cloud? I'm trying to think of a practical question where it's not just about remembering what the service does, but it's putting into context of what your use case.
Yes. Let's come with an example.
Yes.
I like a scenario based examples. You have a very good understanding in the EdTech business, which is educational technology business, right? We have this other
Yes.
online store that Andy has, right? This online store uses a lot of AI to analyze the essays that students have, right? And then give them some sort of a grading at just by looking at it, the correct grammar, whatever, all those kind of things. So
Yeah.
it's like an AI marker for your essays. And currently, I am running it on my home computer and then servicing it out to the rest of the world. Of course, that's not the most ideal way, but then what would your associate and developer certificate teach you, and how could you use AWS experience to migrate that to the cloud?
Okay. So, as an AWS, if I were to be a solutions architect and migrate you to the cloud first, right? First, I would want to know that, are you willing to go serverless or not, right? So AWS has an application called Bedrock where you can host your AI applications without even having to care about anything. So it's like serverless, right? So I would then gather certain questions such as, what number of requests are you going to need, right? Because yes, it's serverless, but then we're then going to, unlike a server that always is up, we then gonna measure you according to how many requests you're gonna be calling, right?
Making.
And then would then yes, and then we'd also measure what type of data you need to keep after you mark where you're gonna keep the data, whether you're gonna use maybe a DynamoDB where you can like store your data, or a relational database, right, where you're gonna store whatever data that you get from marking. So you need to answer that do you want a NoSQL or a SQL database? And then to run your application, can you use a Lambda where it will then send the request to Bedrock, any other backend that you have, and how many, like, what's the also APIs? Can you manage these APIs via AWS? There's also S3. I mean, you're gonna have to keep the student scripts, right? So
Yes.
it's better to keep the images on S3. So we'll need to also migrate that. And then you can orchestrate like the services to be like, one service will call like the marking service, will call maybe the checking service where you go check. You can orchestrate that on AWS. Yes, and those are the things I can think of. Those are the things I
I'm
can
already
think of.
convinced. I'm already convinced. I want to just put this in context, right? So you spoke about the word serverless, and the word serverless, to people who don't know, it means that you don't have to run physical servers on your home. You don't have to have a laptop that is running for people to access your website. By the way, by setup, she's talking about if you're using Node, you don't have to worry about versions of Node and whatever. It will do the whole installation when you're deploying. And you also talk about the DynamoDB and relational database. So this is where you get to store your data whenever you're running your application. She spoke about S, which is It's like a database, but that is meant for, they call it objects, but it's like your documents, your images, or anything that is not text-based data, which is interesting. And I think you spoke about eventing. It's like, okay, after this API, if you want to do some sort of eventing between your APIs, you can use some infrastructure there to handle that for you and pass data within your APIs. So yeah, no, I just wanted people to get a whole overview of this whole serverless, AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and whatever. People hear about them, but they don't really know how these things work. So are you using AWS in your Educase as well? And how are you using it?
Let me explain why I'm not using it, and I'll tell you what I'm using. As a
Okay.
startup, it's never a good idea to lock yourself into any cloud provider because of them. It can be expensive in the long run. So as a startup, it's usually better to maintain your service yourself, because if ever I want to go to Azure, I can still go to Azure. If I want to go to AWS, you can still go to AWS. With cloud services, you might find yourself locked into one cloud service, and that's never a good idea. They do have amazing credit products where you can get credits, and there has been a study that says that it is quite expensive for especially startups to on the platform. The thing is, most of the times as a startup, you don't really understand your use case, and if you're gonna go to a cloud and an Azure, you're gonna calculate based on what you think. When you then deal with like actual customers, then you see like, oh my goodness, I did not take into consideration certain things. So it's always best to isolate yourself and just if you're gonna use AWS, use the EC2. That's my opinion.
Many people do explain these certificates, but they just explain them on the bypass. It's important that you who have done it, we can actually get a bit more info on it. And then the second certificate, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
you mentioned solutions architect, and you also mentioned the developer architect. How do they differ, those two? Can you please just explain to a person that doesn't know what Educase is in the most simplest way or form, and how it started?
This is my life. So Educase is an EdTech startup that is dedicated to developing technology solutions for teachers. Our aim at Educase is to enable teachers to work more efficiently so that they focus mostly on what matters the most, which is a one-on-one with learners. As I explained to you personally, on a personal note, my teachers are the reason I am today. My teachers, I remember my physics teacher. He used to tell me different inventions. He used to tell me, give me a perspective of where different inventions are coming from, how we are where we are today because of technology inventions. So for me, Educase is I love saying it's a love letter for me to my teachers, to say to them, I appreciate the fact that you're doing what you're doing, but I don't understand why you have to do it at such and like why does it have to be stressful in your life? I believe educators are the unsung heroes of our society. They build each and every innovator, doctor. Everyone goes through the system and they all go through educators. So how it started is that my co-founder Nosipho Ndlovu, her mom is a teacher. So she came to me and was like, Zanele, my mom just spent the entire night creating a question paper. So her mom is teaching in Pietermaritzburg, and what is then happening is that with your lower grade teachers, they do not get assessment questions from the department. So the department starts releasing papers from your GT, which I could say it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But for lower grade teachers, they need to still come up with their own questions and use Word. Word was not designed to create question papers because what they struggle with is alignment. You need to align, you need to it's a lot. I remember last year working with a teacher called Nati, and we had to create a grade 9 questions paper, and it was so gruesome for him, and he needed to create different question papers for different grades and also come back and mark. So Educase was more, as I said, just a love letter from me to my teachers to say that, hey, us as computer scientists, We have solutions. We've got technical solutions, and we are in a world of so much possibility in tech. Why not bring that possibility in computer science? In teaching. So
Teaching, yes.
that's where Educase came from, and then it then became from from creating question papers. We also included grading. Grading is such a pain point for teachers. If you do not know how much of a pain point it is, let me paint a picture for you. So what happens is that teachers do not get time to mark in school. They don't get time to do that at all. Yes, there are period in, you know what periods are like in a timetable for teachers, where they get to mark, but it's never enough. A teacher can mark 70 scripts, and currently the department requires them to mark scripts and return them in 3 days. That means they have to mark somewhere around 100 plus in 3 days.
Yes.
Where do they get the time? The only way they could get the time is if they compromise their own time to mark. A lot of us know this. Even teachers pay other people to mark for them as if they're being paid enough already. Teachers convey information to us. Teachers convey values that I to today have, because those are values that can be transferred through the education system. They need to be psychologically okay. They need to be mentally okay. They can't be fighting. They can't be spending their time marking and come back to school and deal with teenagers. The time you are in this, as I said, when we started this conversation, I came from a school where most of the kids were problematic. That means you're not
Mhm.
only dealing with teaching the kid, but you have to also teach the kid discipline. You need to teach the kid how to behave in the future. You need to teach a kid to be an adult. When then do they get the strength to do that and also come back home, not spend time with their teacher, with their family, but they have to come back and mark. We're seeing in the South African system where we are not getting as much teachers into the system. There aren't any young teachers that are taking teaching. I've met so many teachers, young teachers, that say, oh my goodness, I had a love for teaching, but because of the administrative work and also dealing with students all by myself, where else I have to bear the responsibility of teaching somebody to be a human being for the future of South Africa, it all lies on me. And that's what we are trying to change at Educase, so that we lend a teacher the best help that we can lend them. 67% of them say they're considering to quit teaching because of marking. So what we're doing at
Fair.
Educase is to remove that from them so that they can have their time to focus. It's not like their job is also going to be that easy. Teaching a
Mm.
teenager is difficult. Teenagers are difficult, and we need to then understand that we need to help teachers so that when they go to work, they have enthusiasm. They're happy about their job, and they don't have to take back work home. You don't have to. Nobody in an industry anywhere is like, if Mia is a software engineer, I have to take back home. I'm like, what? Why must I do that? But with teachers, they have no choice. As I told you, the department requires that they mark question papers in 3 days. So teachers spend their precious time where else they could be
Doing all this work.
spending it with their yes, and that's what they do. So that's what we're passionate about. We need to serve our teachers as much as they have served us, and that's what Educase
That's
is
what
about.
Educase is doing. You mentioned so many things, right?
Yes.
But I always like to tone down a few things. And thank you very much for that. Probably that was like a 5 minute introduction of Educase. And the two use cases that stood out for me was question paper creation and definitely marking. And of course, student grading, which follows from the whole thing of marking and stuff like that, right? And you also mentioned
Yes.
67% of the educators are thinking of quitting because, I mean, it doesn't pay to be spending much of your precious time marking or taking your work home. Like in the context of corporate, they call it work-life balance. You need to be able to separate that, and there needs to be a very strong line. Yes, there could be those days when work could fall that side and like your personal life could fall that side, but it doesn't have to be every day or every week, right? And I think it just brings back this whole thing to say, as a teacher, you need to be super dedicated for you to be willing to take your work home. And I mean, an average person wants to, yes, do work because they love it, but they also want to make sure that their work supports their lifestyle, which means if you go to church or you are a groovist or whatever you do on weekends, you go for hiking and whatever, your work should be able to support that, right? I mean, on top of the features you have said here, I mean, I don't think there's anything I can add. Do you think at some point Educase could have stuff like pattern recognition and learn from each student behavior? Uh, I don't know if you get that question right, but the question is maybe where a teacher could just go back to this AI and say, okay, today Zanele behaved in this way and whatever, like pointers that are quite useful for that student and be able to kind of learn that person. Maybe the AI teach back the teacher how they can best deal with Zanele and stuff like that. Yes?
Yes, totally. Of course, this is where we're going to. At Educase, we're trying to make teaching easier and learning more personal. I believe that in order for us to make learning personal, we need a feedback loop that makes the teacher analyze where the learner is. So with our auto-graded system, you not only get the opportunity to just grade, what you do is that you also get metrics. So we can analyze on a topic level, but not only on a topic level, on a cognitive level. So let me make an example. In maths, there are cognitive level, such as problem solving. With those cognitive levels, right? When we mark, because our questions are already tagged with the topic, they tagged with the cognitive level. When you mark, we able to understand, we able to pick up how each learner performs per knowledge level, problem solving. Okay, yeah, there's in maths, let me go back a bit. In maths, there's like procedures. Now, procedures is when you are solving for, let's say, a quadratic equation. In a quadratic equation, there's a procedure that you need to do, like you need to put everything on the right hand side, solve for x is equal to 5 and the other x is equal to 3. So those are the things. Then you've got your complex procedures. Complex procedures are more like, let me make simultaneous equations. You know, simultaneous equations, those are more complex procedures. So what happens is that a paper, when you're creating a paper, there needs to be balance between like all these cognitive levels to say, hey, can you do complex procedures? Can you do procedures? Can you do knowledge? Knowledge is like, hey, what type of graph is this? And then you say, hey, this graph is this type of a graph. This is a quadratic graph. This is a anything that like it's when you're remembering. And then
Yeah.
we then can mark at that level. We can then say at this level, when it comes to complex procedures, this learner is struggling. When it comes to your when you have your unseen questions, those unseen questions like quite like probability. You know, probability is like a bit difficult because we don't even spend that much time in it when we are in high school. So you then get to analyze that on that level. And then what we do is that we give you a graphic view of the learner's performance according to versus the class. And then we also give you like suggestions so that when you create your next exam, you create it according to where your class is. And even when you go back as a teacher, you go back with stats and analysis of where exactly the learner is performing. So you can see the performance of the learner as with different tests. You can see the performance of the learner according to the class. You can see the performance of the learner in each topic, so that when you give out solutions in class, when when a teacher goes in class and does corrections, they will then have an understanding of which topic do I emphasize on, so that the learners can understand. But not only that, we're not only providing that, we're also providing like personalized feedback for the learners, which means that each and every learner can get Personalized feedback. What does that mean? It then tells you exactly where you went wrong. Sometimes it's not that you don't understand the entire question. Let's be honest. Sometimes you got the first few parts, but you don't understand that simultaneous equations. You have to come back and take the y and first solve for the x, and then take the x and then solve for the y. You get me? So what
Yeah.
we do is that we give you personalized feedback according to where exactly you are not getting the concept, rather than the teacher who's just going to stand up and do corrections. But yet again, as I said, what you're saying is where we are going, because I will say this as a comrade Nyana. We need personalized learning in our lifetime. We need personalized learning.
I always say this story, right? But even when I was in high school, I didn't understand this thing of just going to extra classes and then just be sitting there listening to somebody teaching me about solve for X while I know different forms it could come up with. But at least I would have appreciated if there was a specialized tutor that would teach me things like, let me think of a subject. I think chemistry was not my most favorite strong point in high school. If I could have sat down with somebody who would teach me specific, those equations, how they form the bonds, and I didn't really like those things. So if somebody could have only chosen that section instead of, reiterating the whole of physics or the whole of chemistry or the whole of maths and try to personalize my learning according to me, and you got what I'm saying, and which with your tool here, yeah, I wish it came during my time. So I guess the learners right now in high school are quite lucky to be doing high school at this time. And I believe this will grow up to universities and definitely go into the working class, I guess. Let's talk about the users. You said you have about 70 teachers within the system so far. How easy was it to get them? And what was the biggest flop in getting them? Otherwise, by the way, let's congratulate that first before we talk about the difficulties of it.
So excited. I got my users. So there is a tutoring company called Vele. If anyone wants to join Vele and your kid maybe is struggling, you should go to Vele. You search them online, you can find them. So Vele is a tutoring company and they deliver their services via WhatsApp. So Vele was looking for a solution where they could quickly get the questions. Let me be specific. So as a tutor, what happens is that you need access to questions. Of course, you're not going to create the questions yourself, but then you need access to questions. And what they loved about our product is that you can search per topic to get the questions. What they were using is this: they would go online, search for question papers, and some question papers they can't really find them. As I said, for other grades, especially for like your lower grades, you can't find question papers because the department is not taking care of that. It's the teachers themselves that need to create those questions. So what they loved with us is that you can literally go on our tool, which is at educasetools.com, where you then can search the questions per topic. This is especially important for subjects like accounting, where you need a lot of questions to practice. So what they do is that they then go to a system, create the question papers, create and then send those question papers via their WhatsApp platform. And now they will then have a system where they send the actual link of the question paper. Kids can answer, upload their answers, and then they can mark via our system. That's what we are currently working on. I mean, it's just one client that has 70 users. That's how we're doing, because we are more of a B2B business. And they loved our product. As I said, that having access quickly to question papers rather than to questions, rather than going through different question papers where you will need to be like, hey, is this question what I need? And if it is that question that you need to open it in Word. And if anybody knows that if you open any PDF in Word, you never know what you're gonna be met up with. You might be met up with just bunch of words in one straight line. I don't know if you get me. So that's the reason they bought into our company, and they just love the fact that they don't need to type, they don't need to rely, and they can just mix up questions from different papers. And that's why they just bought into this company. And shout out to Vele, because they gave us an opportunity to show to they, when a person pays for your product when it's not ready, and you're like,
I see.
thank you
Validate.
very much.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a for us, I call them a tester that pays, that's willing to take on money. So they bought the license, and currently we're just looking for our second client to join our team at Educase. And yeah, that's what's currently happening.
Let's hope one of the people that are listening here are gonna be maybe your next client. Let's hope for that.
Yes, please.
But
Yes, please.
nice. So I mean, what was biggest product flop when you were coding this thing? I mean, you mentioned something about as a startup, you don't really know what you are doing, or you do know what you're doing, but then it might not be relatable to a normal person or to the targeted customer there. So how did you make sure that Educase it is where it is today? And what was your biggest product flop when you're doing Educase?
Build the product yourself. So
Okay.
I was working, right? I had like a full-time job. So we got funding and then we paid this other guy. His name is George. I'm actually gonna say this about him. And because we had not developed the product, you never know what you're developing until you have an idea. And in as much as you might gather resources. Okay, let me start it here, right? You don't know what you're developing at first. You have an idea, I want to create question papers easier, but you never know exactly the nitty-gritties and how much you have to be agile. So in a startup, especially a tech startup, have a technical person that will build the application. Outsourcing is good and all for solutions that already exist. And what do I mean by solutions that already exist? Uber is a solution that already exists. Uber,
Yeah.
it's a platform that you have a client. I mean, you've got the person that's providing the car, and then you've got a person that's riding. Those solutions, you cannot source them because, to be honest, it's you know what to follow. It's not new. What's new is where you're applying it. It's like if I want to do an Uber in Limpopo, honestly, I can just copy Uber as is. But with our product, it needed a bit of first understanding what we're solving for. I would say that the first time what we did is that we had paid this other guy called George, and even today he did not deliver our product. And
Bad judge.
the
Bad
the
judge.
the
That's not good, judge.
George from yes, and
Don't mention
I
his
think
full
that
names. Let's just say George. We'll know him. Bad George. Don't do
George,
that, George.
we paid George DK. We paid him DK and he did not deliver. I would say, yes, I would like to blame all on George, but then even us, we didn't understand. And to think that a dev house will understand your problem more than you understand is a lie.
It is.
They can build, they know how to build technologies, but building a technology is not about building technology, you're building a solution. And in a solution, you need to understand the problem. So if what the flop that we did was to get him, and then he took our 30K, even today, the 30K, nothing. 30K is a lot, as we spoke
It's
about
a
earlier
lot.
on. Yes, and he didn't get it, he didn't complete the project. And then we started building. Then when we started building, this is what's happening, right? The mistake that we did, hey, first, before we started building, we wanted to test out if there's an appetite. We went to test out an appetite at this other event for IEB. They had like an event, and then this guy was like, I need the solution. When this other client said, I need the solution, remember, we haven't built it, and that other one disappointed us.
Yes.
That means that we needed to build. So we built without planning properly. Till to today, we are suffering because of that decision. We were so hungry to sell, and we didn't realize that the exercise that we took was not for us to sell, but for us to validate if this was viable in the market. Just because we got an interest from a customer, jumped in, and that customer is not with us. I don't know if
Okay.
you get me. Like
I see. I hear what you're
we
saying.
You hear what I'm saying? Just because you have a client that says, I want this, doesn't mean that you don't have to plan.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean you have to sell to that client. Because oftentimes I know speed matters. Speed matters. But also life is a balance. Life is about balancing. You can't just because you had a client and you're not ready, and then you make certain decisions, you code. Even to today, that happened like last year around June. Even today, there are things that I'm suffering because of those decisions that I made because I wanted to rush
Okay.
to a client that I don't even have today. So I'm not saying slow down.
Yes, quantity is good at times, but then slow down. Yes, there's this thing that you want to get out there, but people are only going to understand paying for something that will be really solving their problem and not just something you think that it's solving their problem. And sometimes having to take that
Mm-hmm.
time and then maybe engage them along the way, and they can help you shape the whole thing throughout, instead of you just saying, I'm too confident, I can do it, here's the solution, and all those kind of, and now it
Yes,
could be a big flop.
yes.
Yeah, I had a case like that. I wanted to sell so bad to this other client as well, and that was on
Mm-hmm.
my parcel quest business of transporting stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
I still feel today it was one of the biggest flops in selling. Yes, although the client was ready to walk the journey with me, but I was too focused on, I want to close this deal than trying to say, let me go sit down with this client, understand their business. Like, it was supposed to be, take some time, understand them, take some time, instead of just saying, okay, I have this solution and I feel like I've got it under control. And sometimes it may, to the other person, it may look like you are boasting too much. It's good to boast, but then understand these people are only going to pay for what's useful for them. I think I get your
Yes.
point from that end. I think another big point I got there was, don't just think that paying for your product would get you the best product you do you do want. I mean, you do need people who are so invested with emotions and with their heart, with their mind, with their lives, and with their livelihood to the product that you're doing. But especially if you're starting something new, just taking money, let's say 200K, 300K. People are paying a lot of money, by the way, to dev houses that are just there, but they don't understand that their type of a product is not an existing product. It's a product that is new. It requires somebody to walk the journey with you. And I mean, there are some other dev houses that I know. They walk the journey with you. They get a product analyst or product owner that tries to understand and craft that best technically. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's a rare case. We do find those, but people are just looking for the money instead of trying to give value back to their respective dev clients. But yeah,
And then can I say something about dev houses?
yes,
They are
yes.
killing. They are killing the startup, the whole startup ecosystem. They are. They are because the other day I met a guy that was like, I can't believe you guys coded this in a year. Because we did this like literally, as I said, we started around July last year. And he was like, I'm not a software developer and I don't have power. I
Yes.
like it just makes me powerless because I have to pay. And every time things change, they're not going to be like, hey, things have changed, because we understand that you you building your products. As you say, there's some dev houses that walk the journey with you, but most dev houses, they count per hour. I would advise people to go for a no code tool. I know they would say that a no code tool is not liable, but I'm just saying to start with a no
It's
code
fine.
tool so that you're not spending that much money into a product that you are going to change it. You're probably going to change it 1,000 times, by the way.
Mhm.
You are constantly, it never ends. It never ends. So dev houses, especially George, you should do better. Don't accept products. Don't accept, no, honestly, do not accept projects that are not that like are not more of a solved solution. As I
I
said,
see.
Uber is your Tinders and your Take a Lot. Those are, you know what fields you need. you know what database you need. But with our application, it was way more complicated because I still complicate it even today. Yeah.
I see. So I think, was there any reason why you didn't do it yourself? Did you feel not ready? I mean, you're a software developer yourself. I mean, why did you outsource?
There was money and there was also, I didn't have the time.
I see what you're saying. You don't have to explain yourself. I love that answer. There was money, and by the way, when she's talking about money, it's they had access to money to go pay somebody else, and they felt like they didn't
Yes.
have the time to do it. Which, yeah, it's a
Yes.
common mistake that people
But
do.
as a software developer, build it yourself. Build it. It always changes. It changes. And you need to, unless you have that much money to pay those guys from India. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes the other way around in many cases. Cool. I think this conversation has been going on for a very long time. I just have the last two Q&As. It's a
Yeah.
mostly go for this and that, but in your case, I want to just ask the first one to say, what are some of the books that you would recommend? Stating here, you have already stated Maru and the social network, and what would be the third one and why? Can you just give us a one context in your maybe most favorite book? The three top books you would suggest somebody read.
3 top books. Okay. They 2 are from the same author, and then the other one is okay. The first one I would recommend is The Alchemist. It's not your business book, but it's just a book about chasing dreams and not giving up and failure. And I think the way that book ended is that the 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 main character in the book was trying to search for a treasure, and where he started, like where the book started, he goes to Egypt, he goes to the pyramids to go search for a treasure, and then only to find out the treasure is where he started, where he was actually. So where you are, water where you are, that's what that book taught me. Be where you are, water where you are, look for problems of where you are, start businesses from problems of where you are, be who you are. Like, you will search the entire world, but then there's a path for each and everyone. It's your path. It may be slow. It may be slow. It will probably be slow, especially in the world of social media where people are always successful at a very young age. It may be slow, but where you are
Yeah.
is where God put you. Where you are is where God put you. And it's where you are most likely to recognize what needs to be done more than anybody from Silicon Valley. And that's where we started Educase. It was where we are. We're in Africa. Our education system needs a solution. Yes, I may work
Africa.
around the world. Yes, I may go to the UK, but I am mostly
The best
effective
person to solve.
where
Yeah.
I
The
am.
best person to
Yes,
the best person to solve the problems of where you are because they relate more with you and you
yes,
understand them the ins and outs.
yes. That's
Okay.
how I understand the alchemist. Yes, because he went to Egypt, went through trying to think that it's the Egypt, the pyramids that have the solution for you, but no, it's where you are. Open your eyes to where you are. And then
Second one.
the second book, yes, it's by Yuval Harari. It's called Homo Deus, and then A Brief History of Tomorrow. Both his books, they are about history. Oftentimes you want to read self-help books. I'm not, to be honest with you, I've been built by self-help books. I love self-help books. Some people are like, self-help books are not useful. They are. They are.
What are those?
But Yuval Harari, he tells you the history of what happened, not how other people are interpreting it because it's their own journey, but understanding the history of innovation, the history of what happened, not what other people take as a lesson. Yes, there are lessons. Like, honestly, I'm not disputing any self-help book. I I don't think they're that bad. But learning what happened, how certain things happened, why do we have law? Why is it a crime to murder, but it's not a crime to cheat? Well, else those are sins that were in the Bible. Such things can then open up your mind to say, what exactly do you need to build? Like, what does it mean to build? What does it mean to introduce new things into the society? Which is called A Brief History of Tomorrow. Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. It says all the type of innovations, how soccer was played on green grass. There's a reason why soccer was played on grass. And
Why?
such just opens up your mind to say that because
Why was
grass
soccer played on green?
looked more expensive. So because it looks more expensive, so it would attract people who have money. Because that's why you even have certain type of shoes to play on that grass. Because let's be honest, if you're playing on like a field, you don't need those shoes. Those shoes are there because of grass, which was there because a lawn means, like, green grass means you have money. So that's where such things come from. So learning things that you see on a daily basis and attaching meaning to them will help you innovate and understand that innovation did start somewhere, and things that work for you today, they're there because somebody thought about it and it was not the norm and they made it the norm. So understanding your history and not a perspective of history is very important.
Yeah, I mean, this whole chat was it was a very big eye opener, more especially when we were talking about Educase. I still have so many follow up questions, but because of time, again, I would just chop the chat here. And I would like to say again, thank you very much for creating this wonderful time and having a chat with me, educate me there and there, which is, I mean, yeah, I thought I was so invested in education, but I see, yeah, there is a different view to this whole thing, which is wonderful. And I love what you're doing at Educase. And I mean, if I was a tutor, definitely I was going to be your client as well with what you're doing. And yeah, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. And definitely there will be people that will reach out and let your business grow and grow and grow from here. And thank you very much. Anything you would like to say before we close the chat?
Thank you for your time. Enjoyed this chat so much. Thank you. I hope your platform grows and we get to share our experiences as computer scientists. We need more of us, of computer scientists. And I do believe, as much as maths is a problem in this country, but I do believe that with the correct support structure, we can build more. And whoever's going to be listening to this, Andy is amazing, and your platform will grow. It will grow. Best of luck. I thank you for this. Thank you so much. You made me reflect, and you made me. I'm grateful in a way when I think about my journey. It hasn't been easy. I'm not painting myself as the smartest person in the room, but then reflecting on my hard work is amazing. And thank you so much for the platform. Thank you.
You know, when we actually started this conversation, I went there and find the meaning of perseverance from Google. I'm going to read it as it says, right? And I remember perseverance, it's your, I think I would say your middle or your third name. You have so many names. You're one of those people with so many names, right?
Everyone
And
wanted to give me a
perseverance.
name.
Sorry?
I want to
Everyone
record what
wanted
you
to give you a name. They wanted to contribute. Ne? I see.
everyone. I'm like
And
that kid.
yeah,
Okay, I want to
and
record what
100%. And what I got from Google, perseverance means that continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties. Continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulty. You're not just doing, you're doing and achieving, which is important. Despite difficulties, failures, or opposition. I mean, I remember your high school friend who told you need to read a bit more. And those opposition for you, it made you still continue to achieve, you know? And I think another one, it says the action or condition or an instance of persevering. Steadfastness. I'm going to assume they squashed the word being steady and maybe trying to move as well and all those
Yes,
kind of things.
yes.
So, yeah, your name and your life story, they match. Your life story is in perseverance. And I think for me, you might think that you might have to fight for everything in life, but you might have to just only fight for the beginning. The rest shall follow. Yeah, I mean, keep on doing what you're doing. I'm a big fan, 100%, and keep on persevering, eh? And yeah, thank you very much.